So with the people that we've interviewed so far, I find a common theme, and I think it just stems from a sense of ignorance. But oftentimes people, when they talk about the earlier days of the gay and lesbian movement, they say we understood the L, we understood the G, we understood the B, but the T we didn't really get. And so why do you think that sort of disconnect happened, at least in the very beginning? Do you still see it today? And what would you say to those people back then? Why is it all one movement together? Or is it not?
So on the question of T, being in the gay, lesbian, bi movement and all of that, again, I'll speak primarily from my observations and personal position, but that's that many of us, myself included, were not really aware of orientation issues. Who or what you go to bed with, if anybody or anything at all, is one crude way. A great friend of mine put it, an activist, but I love it because in a way it just puts it right out there on one side, and the question, what do you mean when you say the word I, on the other side? And for me it was that I business. And until I settled that I business, I just didn't really want to put this body next to anybody else's, or if I ever tried, it was most uncomfortable. So in a way, I just hadn't had the intellectual experience to see the connections, where they might be, until later on, when engaged with wonderful folks at Seattle Counseling Service or other primarily gay and lesbian folks who were activists of the time, I began to see the connections. Let me speak about those. But first, I don't ever blame anyone for not understanding gender identity issues. But I think once we've had the conversation, then there's a real argument to be made for unity. For example, after some years, if you looked around, transgender people were always there helping. In the old days, we were licking the stamps and putting them on the envelopes and all the rest of it. We were all, to put it again a little crudely, all hated. It mattered not to our opposition whether we were gay or lesbian or bi or trans. That didn't matter. But I think the most profound thing was that all of us are dealing with the question of who we are and how we bring it into the world in some safe and healthy way. And that was the connection that brought me to believe that allyship, partnering, being with the gay and the lesbian activist community made a lot of sense. And I was very lucky to have encountered Seattle Counseling Service, Pride Foundation, Hands Off Washington, which is now, after many iterations, become Equal Rights Washington, and meet people who were identifying primarily as gay or lesbian, but were political powerhouses, careful thinkers. And so it made sense. Then there might come a moment when there'd be someone who would say, trans people, and incidentally, we didn't use the word transgender because it didn't exist at the time. But those transsexuals, they don't know what they really want, or all those kinds of discussions. But those were almost always cleared up by the kind of conversation I was just describing a moment ago, where we really express our true sense of selves. So what I've discovered over the years was that great work can be done with a minimal amount of education, and that's happened at Pride Foundation and GSBA and all the local organizations that are still around. And it happened at the national level. I've been a member of the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force, which incidentally, that name is really the task force and will probably become something new in the future. But the point is, that's the oldest national organization, and it fully and wholly embraced trans after this discussion took place, to the point of writing into policy that, and I'm still on the board, so that we won't connect with or do any work that isn't trans inclusive. And some people said, well, that's not part of what we do. But again, discussion, education, that made the difference. We bond together. And now I think after apart, bonding, working together, now we may be at another point where some folks are asking, shouldn't the trans movement be separate? Shouldn't, in one respect, shouldn't it be its own animal and community and event and process? And, I don't say no to that at all. It can, but I don't ever want to see us try to win the great battle alone, or even like that. I want to see us like that, winning together. So I hope that trans community can solidify our identity as a community, if that seems the way to go, but a community that fully and wholly connects with everybody else. And that today that means such things as immigration, women's rights, labor, and everything, in my mind at least. So we all progress together. There you are.